Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm 𝗤𝘃𝗏𝗏. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley. Mark, you are a cerebral person. What are you reading these days? What do you got on the bookshelf or on the little headphones? So I know you don't actually read them.
On the headphones right now, I'm listening to a book that is very slow and boring, but it's awesome. It's a newer book, came out last year, 𝗬𝘗𝗏 by 𝗤𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗏. Same Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. I don't know if you ever heard of that one, but same author. It's all about like decision making and the bias and just the noise around. If a bunch of people like something on Facebook, the likelihood of someone coming on there and liking it versus not liking it, just the different probabilities of how people make decisions and how decisions get convoluted with other people and other variables. So very boring, but very, very good at the same time. I actually just finished up this weekend Tangled Web, which is, I love these Chicago mob books, which is a story of Richard Kane. But two awesome books I read recently, Work Clean by Daniel Charnas, which is all about it's all about cooks and the kitchen and preparation and how much they plan for it and how every little step in that kitchen or movement is so crucial to the timing of getting the food out there right, or not running out of ingredients, or making sure you have the right amount of food for a certain amount of plates. So it's all about planning and business, and it relates to business, but it's all about the kitchen. And then one other book, I'm sorry, I'm taking it
Keep
off.
rolling.
But, when I was doing my training, I read a very long book. I listened to a very long book, which is Warren Buffett, Snowball. I think it's a little older, but it was an awesome book. It was the entire biography of Warren Buffett and really how his wealth has snowballed to what it is today. So all four of those is kind of what I've been working on recently.
Nice. We're going to have Tony link to all those in the show notes.
What about you? You're always on something.
Yeah, I like to just reread the same dozen books. Like, I'm kind of boring, but I figure if you take the Think and Grow Rich, The Road Less Stupid, like some extreme ownership, if you just apply those principles, you will be fine. So I more try to master that than go out for new things. So I'm even more boring than you, but I'm back on The Road Less Stupid. I just love it. All the questions at the end of the chapter, what is the obstacle stopping you from 10xing? How might I so that I can? What isn't happening that if it did, the situation would change? Like all those type of questions where if you just really sit down and give yourself an hour to focus and try to answer, like you will start to see the world differently and think differently.
Do you take notes when you're reading books?
I try to, yeah. So with a book like that, what I'll do is I'm physically reading this one. So in the first cover, like I'll put on like the page numbers of the questions that I want to go back to.
Yeah, I take notes in my iPhone. Now I'll tell you this: whenever I'm reading a good book, I'm like, I'm so going to read this again, but I never do. Like it's like I'll refer the heck out of a great book, but I end up always just reading books, and the amount of information out there just seems so vast that I feel like it's just a mountain I want to keep climbing. And then every so often I'll revisit a good book. But Road Less Stupid, I forgot what chapter it is. I think it's audio track 12, but where he goes through all his mistakes that he learned from the crash back in the 80s was timeless information that would have helped people in the Great Recession, and then whatever is the next one that's going to happen in the next 20 years. So really good book.
Awesome. What do we got for the housing provider tip of the week?
So the housing provider tip of the week is going to kind of go back towards the pre-closing. I know we've talked about this topic with Chance before, but this is coming up a lot I'm seeing with our clients here at GC, but just understanding the closing statement. So when you close on a property, you have this closing statement. Some people still refer to it as the HUD, but it has all this different information on there, all these different numbers that you're getting credits for, property taxes, you're getting rent credits depending what time of month you're closing, you're getting security deposit credits. You're getting all these numbers, and then there's just closing costs, all the stuff that you can't understand why you're getting charged. But just understanding all those different charges on there is so important if you're going to be doing multiple transactions and understanding what. Now I know when we were buying and selling a lot, we understood and built in closing costs as a percentage of the sale price. So understanding that, you should know when you're about to flip a property what your closing cost, that percentage is going to be. And just so you can plan for that. And it's not like, oh, I didn't realize it's going to be $3,200 for all that stuff. The other big one that hit recently when we were trying to sort out security deposits for the recent RTLO, where we had to change everything and put the security deposits for Cook County into a specific account. a lot of people that closed didn't have the deposits, or we had a couple people that didn't even get the deposits credit to them. And it took months later for them to go back to the seller or the title company and actually call them out on it. So just make sure you understand those numbers. If you have an attorney, they will usually walk you through it, but have the attorney actually walk you through it. Don't let the attorney lead the show. Understand what you're doing.
I love it. All right, so let's dive in here. So today's guest, we have another Mike Glasser referral. Mike has been very, very generous to us over the past couple months that we've known him. But today's guest, the Director of Acquisitions and Asset Management for Pioneer Acquisitions. And over the past years, they have grown from 20 buildings to over 60 buildings in the Chicagoland area with further growth to come. He's actually a member of the Rogers Park Builders Group. That's how him and Mike know each other. Owns roughly around 400 units up there. And we originally called him to say, oh, can you talk about Rogers Park? And he said, well, I also have 1,200 units in Hyde Park. So why don't we focus there? We said, well, 1,200 units is nothing to sneeze at. Finance background from the University of Chicago. So very fitting since we'll be talking about that general geographical area. And also just a background as an analyst, which got him started here, which is, we'll talk a little about just how he actually became part of Pioneer Acquisition. So without further ado, Nick Hollenkamp, welcome to the show. Nick, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on.
We're pumped to talk about this. So let's talk a little before we jump into all these units and why Hyde Park and all that fun stuff. How did you get synced up with Pioneer Acquisitions? Because I think this is a great story of always putting yourself out there.
Yeah, so I was still an undergrad at the University of Chicago, studying economics, and real estate's not an area that a lot of graduates from University of Chicago focus on. And I had done a summer internship at General Growth Partnership working in capital markets, so financing large commercial properties. And so that kind of piqued my interest, and I was working on networking with a bunch of real estate companies around Chicago trying to find a job. And my apartment building, which was near Hyde Park Boulevard and University, so on the north side of the neighborhood, was being sold. And we had the interesting duplex unit in the property, so they always loved showing it off. And just one random spring day, people were going through my unit, and I just decided to strike up a conversation with them and asking them questions of what type of people are interested in buying in Hyde Park, what are they looking for, et cetera, and made enough of an impression that 2 weeks later, my landlord reached out and said, hey, some guys you talked to are interested in having you interview, just because they were looking at acquiring in Hyde Park. And so that kind of got the ball rolling, interviewed with them, secured the position, and that was 6 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's so good. So also, random question. Did you have Professor Joe Pagliari there? We had him on as guest 61. I don't know if your paths ever crossed.
Yes, I have. So he was one of the ones that I was reaching out to back in that winter, spring of 2015. And so he was one that I went in and talked to. He gave me a few books to read as well. And I've actually been able to connect with a bunch of other Booth graduates over the years and been able to go to one of their happy hours. And it's always, oh, this is what Professor Pagliari had to say on this. So he's, very, very well spoken of with his, former students.
Yeah, that's great. If you guys haven't listened to that one, I believe it's episode 61, somewhere around that range, but really great knowledge about just his view on Chicago and some of the headwinds we face and how to tackle them. So, all right. Well, Nick, that's a great story about how getting started. So obviously 1,200 units in Hyde Park. That's a lot. And Hyde Park geographically is not that large of a neighborhood. So let's start with why. Like, why are you guys in Hyde Park? Why do you like the neighborhood? Why are you expanding there? Let's give the macro economic view, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, so part of the reason why Pioneer got started, and this is part of why I got hired, was the guys had, my two bosses, two New York guys, were looking at buying more properties in Chicago and had done plenty of north side deals, but were starting to focus on Hyde Park just because they like the stability of the neighborhood. You have the built-in student tenant base and then all of the accompanying jobs around it. And so starting off small, just looking at some of the 20 to 30 unit properties. And for us to be able to get to 1,200 from, I think our first acquisition in Hyde Park was August 7th, 2015, and that was just a 27 unit property. So for us to go from 27 units to 1,200, it was really through a couple of large portfolio purchases that we did with the University of Chicago. And so we've acquired 2 of their graduate student housing portfolios, which deals of, first one was 19 buildings for 676 units. Second one was 11 properties, 394 units. So that's how we were able to achieve scale so quickly. And then just having a good working relationship with the university, and then getting introductions to other groups in the neighborhood, that we've been able to do another few deals as well. And for us, it's been, the university is always going to be a stable economic driver. And if you look at, I believe from the financial recession back in 2007 to 2009, that prompted a lot of people to go back to school. So even if the recession occurs, you're going to have good occupancy in university-driven submarkets, which is a great reason here. And so we've had good success here. The COVID was an interesting one, just due to the virtual classes and people leaving campus. But beyond that, it's a very stable neighborhood and has good occupancy. And we've also surpassed all of our rent growth expectations as well.
That's great. So we got to talk about this deal. So we buy 600 doors from the University of Chicago. I think you just blew most of our listeners' minds there. Like, wait, how do you do that? How do you get even into that situation? So let's break that down. Like, how did you guys even know to go after the university? How was that partnership formed? They're not just sitting there putting that on LoopNet, right? Like, how did this all come together?
Yeah, so the university had partnered with HFF at the time, so they brought out the listing. And so this was, I came into the fold shortly after this was put under contract. So some of the earliest items I couldn't quite tell you, but they had a couple of New York connections, and they're very active in building relationships with other real estate partners in Chicago, especially with the brokers. And building the relationships with the brokers is key, and that's something that I've worked on doing in a few of the other markets, just so that if there are off-market deals, if the broker knows what you're looking for, and if you're a qualified buyer, they'll bring it to you. And so for us, it was just we were still a little newer. We were one of the smaller players at the time bidding on this one, but we had a good background, good success, and we were not the initial winners of the deal. There was another group that eventually fell out of contract, but because we were persistent, we were able to put this one under contract. And that would be one of the pieces of advice: is never fully give up on a deal just because somebody might offer a higher number. They might retrade, or they might not have the equity backing that they think they did. And so just staying engaged, following up on a deal before it closes. There have been a couple that have fallen out of contract that we're still working on as well.
See, Tom, that was your advice from a couple episodes ago, to stay with the deal, even if you don't get it on the first try.
Yeah, see, it's all coming together. We're linking in past guests. We're having a good show so far, guys.
Yep.
So Nick, what type of play was this? Was this, was there a value add component? Like, what attracted you guys to this deal?
Yeah, it is a value add component. And so that's our typical deal, is going in, doing a little bit of a lift, call it anywhere from 15 to 25,000 in value add per unit. And for us, it was University of Chicago dominates the landscape. There are a few other housing providers in the area. And because it was coming from a university, the properties were very well maintained. And so a lot of the existing mechanicals were in good condition, so we could really just focus on the units without worrying about any other hidden costs that were going to come up with, bad piping, boilers needing to be replaced. And some of those, have happened over the years, but a lot of these deals have performed very well. And we were able to go through and renovate up to 1,200 units over the last couple of years. We've probably done about 1,100 of them. And for the ones that are unrenovated, we have good existing long-term tenants that are either university-related or people that have been there for a while. They take great care of the property, great care of the unit, and we're still able to achieve pretty good rent growth.
That's awesome. So let's say, I'm a smaller guy. I have a 3 unit. I'm looking to buy my next 3 unit in Hyde Park. What would you say to that person? Like, if is there still a play for them to find something near the university, or they need to look further north? Like, is there still a play for someone that's not as not at the scale that you guys are running at?
Yeah, I think there are certainly still plenty of opportunities for us and probably a few of the others that are looking in the neighborhood. There are certain unit or certain property sizes that we're really not looking below. So for me, if something's under 20 units, I'm not focusing on it as much, just because there's going to be somebody else who's going to be able to give it more attention than, say, my firm would be able to. We're focused on some of the larger ones. And so a bunch of the other firms looking in the area are looking at those larger properties, which there are still quite a few available in the area. And so if just going up and down the neighborhood of Hyde Park, you're going to see plenty of those 3-unit properties. Some of them might be condos, but they've been condos for a while, so it could be potential to deconvert an older condo building or buy into it. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities here, but the area has gotten some focus for the last 10 years. And so a lot of those opportunities are probably, there's not going to be as many as you might think, but that's also causing an increase in availability in some of the other neighborhoods that are seeing more development and some of the older homes there that have potential to be reworked.
The redevelopment in Hyde Park in the last 10 years has been just amazing. You know, we started working down there in 2008, 2009. We had a couple offices in and around Hyde Park for 7 of the last 10 years. Like, it's just crazy. I mean, the old buildings taken down, high rises built, just the money that's been put into that area. What's exciting you about the next 10 years of what's happening down there, or any projects you know about that you can share with the listeners that overall is just going to help continue to grow this community?
Yeah, I would say that first, the university has seen very explosive growth. So just when I went into the university, I think since then the acceptance rate has been cut in half. One of my old friends was a admissions officer there, and just the volume of applications they receive year over year is increasing, and that's both for undergraduate and graduate programs. So there's still growth just in enrollment in the university. And that's part of what's driving some of the new developments, such as some of the high rises going in. Solstice on the Park, there's the City Hyde Park, and the new one on 53rd and Cornell. And so those are some of the new developments. Plus, the university is doing a lot of investment in building new student housing, building new hotels, and investing in some of the commercial corridors. So all of that investment is attracting more call it young professionals that are looking to live in the area, where maybe the north side neighborhoods have been too pricey, and there are more job opportunities just around the university. So the Harper Court, they're working on adding a second office tower that's going to focus more on some of the life sciences and having, I believe it's wet labs, different spaces that could focus on scientific investment as well. So plenty of opportunities driven by the university, and then all of the other potential groups coming down investing in the area as well.
Let me take a step back here. I'd love to hear what's like your guys' consideration of Hyde Park, because some of the lines get a little blurred as you go north, and where does Woodlawn start for you for the south? Like, give us your breakdown of the specific neighborhood of Hyde Park, how you guys run it.
Yeah, I typically view it as Cottage Grove Avenue on the west side, the Midway Plaisance on the south, and then Hyde Park Boulevard on the north. So I would consider Kenwood north of Hyde Park Boulevard, Woodlawn south, and then just going over to the lake as well, to include everything east of Lake Park Avenue as part of Hyde Park.
Perfect.
And then Nick, do you guys look at Woodlawn to the south or Kenwood to the north? Like, are those in play for you at all? Or are you specifically staying in this little Hyde Park pocket?
No, we have looked at several properties up in Kenwood, down in Woodlawn. We also own 2 properties down in South Shore. So we're looking at all the different options. And partly just as there's been more interest in Hyde Park, and you're seeing more people willing to look at Kenwood or Woodlawn as well. And especially Woodlawn, now that you have and maybe that's where there are more 3-flat opportunities, where you have more development going on by the university south of the Midway, and you also have the presidential library that has finally broken ground down in Jackson Park. And so there's going to be a lot more opportunities in that area as well.
Got it. Got the golf course right there too. So what are you getting? This is a tough question, but let's say you have like a 2-1 for your student housing there. What do those, when you put your 15-25 grand into the unit, what does the finished product look like? And give me a range or typical type of rent you're getting for that type of unit?
Yeah, so our typical finished product would be, if it's more of a traditional walk-up, so 3 to 4 story building with hardwood floors, we would refinish the hardwood floors, install new shaker cabinets with quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, and then we would retile the bathrooms, new fixtures, toilet, vanity, and otherwise we would like to keep a lot of the existing vintage finishes, doors, anything that we can really. Sometimes you're going to have unique built-ins that we will keep instead of trying to break those down. Mm-hmm. And depending on the property, we do have a couple that have in-unit washer dryer, but for the most part, some of these older buildings, it's going to be a little difficult to do, and that's a significant cost trying to add it in. So for most of our properties, they have common building laundry. And then when it comes to the pricing of those, it's really going to depend on where you are in the neighborhood. And so maybe we save that later if we go block by block, but I would say the closer you are to campus, you're going to see a lot more, a higher rent per square foot, and that's where you're going to see a lot more demand. So typically that would be 54th and Woodlawn is an area where we have units that those properties are always 100% occupied. That's in between campus and the 53rd Street business corridor, so very popular. And I would say some of the lower like price per square foot would be in the northwest corner, so up towards Hyde Park Boulevard when you're on Drexel and Ingleside, over in that area where there's not as much commercial activity, where you're getting farther from campus and farther from, say, the Trader Joe's and the Whole Foods as well. So in the 54th and Woodlawn, I'd say I believe we're in the $1,500 to $1,600 range for a 2-bed, 1-bath, and then in the northwest section of Hyde Park, we're probably closer to $1,400.
I love that. I can almost see the graph in my head, the epicenter, 54th and Woodlawn, kind of going out as rents go down. I love it. So you have a large portion that are market tenants or non-student housing, and you have a whole bunch of student housing. Like, what are you guys doing different with the two? Or we haven't talked too much about student housing on the show as a whole. Like, what is it, truly student housing, or is it just students renting housing? Like, kind of give us a breakdown of the difference in your portfolio and how you might operate differently or underwrite it differently.
Yeah, so we don't view it as student housing. It's a submarket that is dominated by students, but I would typically classify a student as more the undergraduate, where they don't have income and they're requiring a guarantor or a cosigner on the lease. And so for some of those, you're going to be the properties that are closer to campus, and that's more of the larger scale units, so 2, 3, or 4 bedroom units. That's where we're seeing what I would call students. But for the most part, where we have, I would say maybe 10% of our units have undergrad students in it. For the most part, we're seeing graduate students and just market rate tenants, where they're professionals who either work at the university or are commuting to downtown. And so a lot of the graduate students, we will qualify on income, where they're getting a stipend or some form of income for research work or teaching duties that they're doing at the school.
That's great. Nick, Chicago's got its headwinds, which we referenced earlier in the show. Does Hyde Park have any specific neighborhood gotchas? Like, hey, it is impossible your rehab's done because we're on top of each other. It's a pain dealing with the alderman, etc. Like, have you experienced anything that would be worth sharing with our listeners?
I wouldn't say that there are necessarily any gotchas. I haven't had too many issues when we've done our work. So unfortunately, I don't have any. Maybe that's a good thing. There are no gotchas that come to mind for Hyde Park.
That's good to know.
Well, let me ask this question then. Let me rephrase Tom's question a little. So Hyde Park is majority made up of a handful of larger housing providers. How does that change the landscape for being a housing provider in there? Is there any challenges or benefits as being one of the bigger ones, or is it make it tougher for the smaller ones?
I would say there are certainly plenty of opportunities for the smaller housing providers. Just as you get closer to campus, that's where we have very few properties close to campus. Most of ours are going to be called in that northeast section, and even I believe MAC and TLC, a lot of their properties are going to be north of 53rd. And so once you get, north of 55th. Once you get south of 55th, you're getting into a lot of the smaller properties. And that's where you have the single family homes and some of the 3 flats where there's probably going to be more opportunity. And for us, we sold a couple of our smaller properties just because, as I mentioned earlier, we want to focus on the larger ones. So a 6 flat, we're looking to turn it over to somebody who's looking to invest and wants a smaller deal size where they can focus more attention on that. So unfortunately, we don't have any of those left to sell, but those properties were typically closer to campus, larger unit size, and they would turn very quickly. So whenever we had a unit available for lease, they rented quickly. So I would say, as one of the larger housing providers, we're focused probably more north of 55th. And if you're able to find a property south of 55th, you're going to have plenty of interest from people affiliated with the school. And because you have a lot more of a smaller neighborhood feel where there aren't as many large apartment properties on the block. So a lot of ours are called former hotels or boarding houses where they could be upwards of 50-some units and call it eight floors or more. And so those are all going to be north of 55th. So if you're focusing south of 55th where there are some smaller property sizes, you're not going to have to worry about some of the MACs, the TLCs, or our Ivy Residences brand.
So you mentioned the university as being an anchor. With COVID, obviously messed up year, fight through it. Do you see anything long term though? Do you have any concerns with maybe learning goes more online? Maybe there is less demand in the future. Are you guys still full steam ahead around the university there?
I would say that we're not concerned about that with this university, just because there are some universities that have such a good brand name and great reputation that they're always going to be of interest. So, University of Chicago, Northwestern have great reputations outside of Chicago. They're going to continue to draw people in. And so it's some of the smaller schools that I would have been more worried about. But here, you're still seeing plenty of people interested in coming in, and it has a great international reputation. And so a lot of graduate students that we see come in are coming in from Europe or Asia, and they weren't able to come in last year, but we're still seeing plenty coming in this year.
One thing that we didn't touch on is we're talking about the school and we haven't talked about the medical piece. There is a huge
Southwest corner
medical research, medical facilities, the actual emergency room, all that. That's got to play a huge part into your tenant base and people that are attracted to there as well, too. Correct?
Yeah, and So we can focus on the university's medicine, but there are also a couple other hospitals as well in the area that have reached out to us in the past about doing programs to house some of their residents, because I believe there's one on the north side of Washington Park. There's a hospital down south of Jackson Park on Stony Island, and Hyde Park is a key driver for residency for some of those hospitals as well, just because of some of the different restaurants and grocery stores in the area.
You mentioned,
so for the
go ahead, Nick.
For the University of Chicago, I know there have been several hospital developments closer to Cottage Grove where they've been continuing to build there. And I was driving by the other day. I think there's another project that they're working on, and so that is going to be a key driver. And so as we talk about the university increasing enrollment, but there's also the hospital that's continuing to grow in size. They're adding more outposts across the city. I noticed a new one opening up in the South Loop the other day. So they are going to continue to develop, and they'll attract more call it nurses and doctors that are looking to live in the area as well. So that's part of why we're pretty bullish on Hyde Park, just for the opportunities and the continued interest in the school and its hospital system.
And the squash arena too. I never knew what squash was until they built that on the corner of 61st and Cottage. I had to go and Google that.
It's kind of nice. You have to the east, you got the lake, and then Washington Park's almost a natural border then, right? It's hard I got to believe that's one of the other reasons that demand stays high. You can go north and south, but you can't go laterally east or west, right? You're almost confined naturally by the park and the lake, and it's got to help drive rent. Which
that to me translates that if you can't make it happen in Hyde Park, you go north or south, invest those places, because naturally, as Nick and them buy everything up in the neighborhood and raise rents, that people are going to want to move north or south and look for quality housing. So,
yeah. Nick, what else? We talked a little about the future of Hyde Park. Is there any other concerns that you would have in there? Are you guys still bullish? Are you looking to go from 1,200 to X amount of units, or is it kind of just, hey, we got a lot on our plate, we're going to maintain these things and see what the future holds?
No, we are still actively looking at acquiring in Hyde Park. So hopefully we might have another one that we'll put under contract before the end of the year. But no, just based on our experience with the neighborhood, positive developments that we've seen, we're certainly working on acquiring several more properties in Hyde Park. And I think some of the other larger groups that are in the area have the same mindset. So it's still very bullish on Hyde Park. It's just some of the headwinds that we're looking at, and probably been mentioned on a few of the previous podcasts, are just now that we're starting to see where taxes are shaking out, and how we may have to look at how's our rent compare, and how much really can rent continue to go up, just given some of the increases that we've seen over the years. Just it's surpassed some of our expectations.
Mm-hmm. One final question for me is, we have a bunch of smaller properties between 60th and 63rd, and those are huge. Those are the number one location for us on the south side. There we get Section 8 applications. Is any of your portfolio Section 8, and anything you speak to on that topic with your portfolio or Hyde Park?
Yeah, so we do have some Section 8 in our portfolio, and it's focused on some of the properties a little farther from the university, just because the ones closest to campus see the most interest and turn pretty quickly. So we rarely have availability at those properties for too long. And so we do have some Section 8 in a couple of our larger properties up on the northwest section of Hyde Park. And so for us, it takes a little longer to get them in, but once the building's approved, oftentimes we'll see a few more people apply as well, and we've had a pretty good experience with those tenants.
Awesome. Nick, anything else you want to throw out there about Hyde Park or the future of it? Or, we didn't really touch on Obama Library because I know that's on every listing within 7 miles of Hyde Park.
Yep.
Anything you want to add to that as far as the future goes, or anything else our listeners would value to them before we wrap?
Yeah, I would just say that as you kind of just go through Hyde Park, if you're just going for a drive up and down some of those streets looking for some properties that might be of interest, and just for us, a few of the cold calls to people in Hyde Park, you may get some people that aren't interested in selling or they've heard too much, but you never know what you might see where somebody just got a new tax bill and now they're thinking about selling and you called them before a broker did. Or if you are working with a broker that they might have some of those listings that aren't readily available, but they might be able to connect you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One more question to Tom's comment before about Washington Park being a natural border. Since I've been down in the South Side, there's been rumors, some people that I think know what they're talking about have given me information that universities bought a lot of land over in Washington Park, and they've been part of this corridor over on Garfield west of the park. Anything you know about that to solidify any university plans as you go on the other side of the park into Washington Park, the neighborhood?
I can't speak to the university plans. I know that there are a few properties over there. There was I'm just looking at the map right here. I can't remember the name of. There's the Green Line Performing Arts Center that they're involved in, and there are a couple other items that they're just working on, continuing to improve different aspects of the neighborhood. But I believe that some of those lots over there at Garfield and Martin Luther King are university owned, and that's where some of the opponents to the Obama Presidential Library wanted them to place the library there just because it was on university owned land and it would not take up land that was currently park. And
Gotcha.
Just because it was close to public transportation and it's just the friends of the park that did not want to lose any park ground to a library.
Gotcha.
So, but
Okay.
Other than that, can't speak to what the university's plans are
All
over
right.
there. I know that a lot of their focus has been on 53rd Street and down a lot of the developments that they have between 60th and 61st Street on the south side of Midway Plaisance.
All right. Just looking to confirm rumors. All right. Cool. Awesome. Nick, we're going to go to a wrap up. You ready?
Yep.
You guys have 1,200 units, crazy amount of units down there. Like, what's been your guys' competitive advantage that others wish they could only have that?
Our competitive advantage is we've kept a good relationship with the university and just several of the other groups in the neighborhood. So you always hear relationships are key in real estate, and that's been an area that we focused on. And so we purchased two portfolios from the university. We also purchased another property from them off market just due to our continued relationship with them.
Nick, what's one piece of advice you would tell someone that has yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
One piece of advice I would say is really focus on some of the expenses, looking at the utilities and the real estate taxes, making sure that you have your assumptions correct, because we've seen a lot of increases in utilities over the years and the real estate taxes where if the property hasn't been reassessed yet, you could be looking at a big jump in year one that you really weren't expecting. So just focusing on some of those expenses would be an area that if you don't have the experience yet of owning, that making sure you have that all outlined in your assumptions.
I'll make one other comment on taxes. Make sure when you're looking at listings that it's the most recent year you're looking at and make your assumptions off of increase off of that. I see a lot of times the tax number quoted, depending on what time of year it comes on, might be from a couple of years ago, just because they don't have it updated. So just make sure you're looking at the most recent year's information to make your assumptions off of.
Yeah. And looking at smaller units, make sure it doesn't, if it's got an exemption, back that out.
Yep. We could do a whole landlord tip on that then. All right. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I enjoy playing sports when I can or going hiking. So I like to one of the great things about living in Chicago is O'Hare and being able to quickly fly anywhere. So going out to hike out in the Rockies. I was in Maine last month, so just doing something outside. That's what I enjoy doing, and reading as well. So when you guys were talking books at the beginning, my current read is it's called Surrounded by Idiots, but it's about understanding people's different personality types and how to work with them. Just because they don't respond to something the same way you would, it's just because they approach different scenarios in a different way, and so it's just relating to people with different personality types.
My partner went to University of Chicago, and he read that book a few months ago. So I wonder if it's a University of Chicago thing.
I don't think so. It was given to me by my sister, so she's a George Washington grad.
Oh, okay.
We should have named the podcast Surrounded by Idiots, by the way. Big missed opportunity there. So, all right. Well, Nick, we're going to hit you up for another one, because the next question was, what good book, podcast, or self-development activity would you recommend to our listeners? So we got Surrounded by Idiots, but can you give us either another book or a podcast?
Unfortunately, I'm not as big of a podcast listener, just because I tend to I lose focus sometimes when I'm listening. But I would say for a book, you mentioned Extreme Ownership. That's been one of my favorites. Another one that I read was, I believe it's Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. So he's the author of Find Your Why. So yep. I thought that was another good one.
Definitely is. All right, good deal. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you'd highly recommend to other investors here in Chicago.
In my local network, I would say Joe Smalzell's been a pretty good one at Intero Realty, and there are plenty of great brokers in the city, but we've had a good working relationship with Joe Smalzell, and he certainly knows the areas of the city pretty well.
Good deal.
That's great. Let's get him on. Nick, thank you so much. You provided a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you, and is there any way they can provide value to you?
I guess if you want to learn more about me, you can look me up on LinkedIn. So Nick Hollenkamp, or on the Pioneer Acquisitions website. And if you want to add value, if you have a property to sell, please let me know so I can buy it before the brokers get it.
There you go. Always looking, always hunting.
Yeah, we'd even dive into your experience at Rogers Park. So anyone, even if you got stuff up north too, share it with Nick. He's in both. You're literally on both sides of the city.
A measly 400 units up there.
Measly.
All right. So, Mark, we already answered the question while we were at today's episode. So I think you're going to get this one. But we talked a little about, like, the borders can be a little fuzzy in Hyde Park, depending if you're buying or selling, right? So I looked up, what is the official north border of Hyde Park? What quarter is the official, if you look at the neighborhood page, which is online, so it has to be legit?
Yeah. 53rd, right?
51st.
51st. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that, because it runs north to the park and runs all the way east. Yep.
See, I thought you had that one.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what our guest says.
I don't know how fast we'll get back to a Hyde Park episode, but one of the things I found interesting when I read the Rockefeller, his biography, one of the first people that really led University of Chicago was William Rainey Harper, which anyone out here in the northwest suburbs knows there's a community college named after him, which is always ironic. Like, that's like you ran one of the Harvard of the West, and you got only a community college named after you.
Yeah, raw deal.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, awesome show. Nick, thank you for coming on here. You gave us a wealth of information on a pocket of the city that we have not covered in depth. So that's always exciting for us and the listeners. Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, go online, leave us a 5-star review. iTunes, it helps us. We actually got boosted to something for Libsyn and Google recently, as far as a higher ranking. So I never really followed that yet, but when we were told that, was pretty cool. So keep reviewing us, keep referring us to friends. You have friends that are investing in real estate, share this podcast with them, and then feel free to reach out anytime if you have guests that you think would add value to all of you, or if you have topics you want to hear covered. Thank you all. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Tom. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.